The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but Sarah's hands still wrapped around the cup like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. The diner hummed with the usual Tuesday night crowd, truckers, insomniacs, people running from something or toward nothing. She belonged to the third category, though she'd never admit it out loud. The man sitting across from her hadn't touched his pie. He'd been watching her with those careful eyes, the kind that had seen too much and somehow still managed to look at the world with something resembling hope. His name was Marcus, and he'd found her crying in the parking lot 20 minutes ago, her car refusing to start and her last $20 crumpled in her fist. "You were married?" he asked, his voice gentle, not probing. "Just there." Sarah looked up, surprised by the question. She'd been staring at the pale line on her ring finger, the ghost of a promise that had died 2 years ago. "Once," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now I'm just someone trying to survive." The words hung between them like smoke, curling and dissipating into the fluorescent lighting. Marcus nodded, understanding etched into the lines around his eyes. He didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. He just sat there, present in a way that most people had forgotten how to be. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," he said finally. "Cancer. The fast kind that doesn't give you time to prepare, even though people keep saying you should always be prepared." He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "Spent the first year angry. Second year numb. This third year, I'm trying to figure out what comes next." Sarah felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking, but softening. "My husband didn't die," she said. "He just stopped seeing me. Stopped hearing me. One day I woke up and realized I'd become invisible in my own life." She paused, swallowing hard. "The divorce papers came on our anniversary. He'd moved on 6 months before that." Marcus reached across the table, not touching her, just extending his hand palm up in invitation. Sarah stared at it for a long moment before placing her own hand in his. His skin was warm and calloused, the hand of someone who worked with his hands and wasn't ashamed of it. "I'm trying to get to Portland," she said. "My sister lives there. She said I could stay with her until I get back on my feet. But my car." She laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "Everything I own is in that car, and I can't afford to fix it. Can't afford a bus ticket. Can't afford anything. What if I told you I was headed to Portland?" Marcus said. Sarah pulled her hand back, suspicion flickering across her face. "Are you?" "I could be." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I'm a carpenter. Been traveling, taking odd jobs, trying to outrun grief by staying in motion. But the thing about running is you never actually get anywhere. You just get tired." "I'm not a charity case," Sarah said, even though they both knew that was exactly what she was right now. "No," Marcus agreed. "You're someone who needs help. There's a difference." He pushed his untouched pie toward her. "When's the last time you ate?" Sarah's stomach answered before she could, growling loudly in the quiet space between them. Marcus smiled, a real one this time, and flagged down the waitress. "2 more slices of pie," he said. "And coffee. Hot coffee." As they ate, Sarah found herself talking, really talking, for the first time in months. She told him about the marketing job she'd lost when the company downsized, about the apartment she couldn't afford alone, about the friends who'd slowly faded away when she could no longer afford to keep up with their lifestyle. She told him about the shame of moving back in with her parents at 35, and the relief when her sister offered her a fresh start. Marcus listened without judgment, without advice, without trying to fix anything. He just listened like her words mattered, like she mattered. When she finally ran out of words, he told her his story, the small construction business he'd built with his wife, how it had fallen apart after she died because he couldn't bear to build anything without her. How he'd sold everything, packed his tools in his truck, and just started driving. "You know what I learned," he said, finishing his coffee. "Survival isn't just about breathing. It's about finding reasons to keep breathing. Small ones at first, a good cup of coffee, a sunrise, a stranger's kindness. Then bigger ones, purpose, connection, hope." "I don't know if I have any of those left," Sarah admitted. "You will," Marcus said with certainty. "Come on, let's get your stuff from your car. I'll drive you to Portland." Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to refuse out of pride or fear or that voice in her head that said she didn't deserve help. But exhaustion won out, exhaustion in the smallest, most fragile seed of hope. Why are you doing this? She asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment, pulling out his wallet to pay the check. Because someone did it for me once. After Laura died, I was in a dark place. Really dark. A stranger, just some guy at a gas station, saw something in my face and bought me a tank of gas and a meal. Told me that sometimes the only way out is through, but you don't have to walk through alone. He looked at Sarah, his eyes shining with something that looked like tears. He asked me to pay it forward when I could. Took me 3 years, but here we are. They spent the next 2 days driving to Portland, stopping at rest areas and cheap motels, talking and sharing silence in equal measure. Marcus told her about the daughter he'd never had, about the house he and Laura had dreamed of building. Sarah told him about the art she used to create, about the person she'd been before she'd lost herself trying to be what her husband wanted. In a small town in Nevada, they stopped at a hardware store. Marcus bought canvas, brushes, and paint. You can't get to Portland without creating something, he said. Consider it payment for the company. That night, in a motel room with peeling wallpaper and a view of the parking lot, Sarah painted for the first time in 5 years. Her hands shook at first, unsure and unpracticed. But then something loosened inside her, and color spilled across the canvas, blues and golds and shades of light breaking through darkness. Marcus sat in the corner, sketching plans for a house he might never build, and somehow it was enough. When they reached Portland, Sarah's sister met them at a coffee shop, tears streaming down her face as she hugged Sarah tight. Marcus hung back, letting them have their moment. But before he could slip away, Sarah grabbed his arm. "Thank you," she said, and the words carried the weight of everything, gratitude and grief and the tentative, precious beginning of healing. Marcus smiled and pressed a piece of paper into her hand. "My number. For when you need to talk. Or when you want to tell me about your first art show. Or just because." He paused. "You're not just surviving anymore, Sarah. You're starting to live. Don't forget that." As she watched his truck pull away, Sarah unfolded the paper. Along with his number, he'd written, "Kindness is never wasted. It plants seeds we can't see, in soil we'll never touch, growing into gardens we'll never walk through. But they bloom anyway. Always bloom anyway." Sarah looked down at her bare ring finger, at the pale line that was already beginning to fade. For the first time in 2 years, she smiled, really smiled, and thought about tomorrow. Not with dread or fear, but with possibility. Because she wasn't just someone trying to survive anymore. She was someone learning to live again. And that made all the difference.